Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us here on KXAN Live. Will DuPree in the KXAN Live studio with some breaking news. The National Hurricane Center says that Hurricane Ian has now made landfall in Florida just a few moments ago, putting out this tweet and a bit of an alert for everybody out there who is in Southwest Florida. Hurricane Ian again made landfall as an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane near Cayo Costa, Florida, with maximum sustained winds at 150 miles per hour. So we wanted to bring in meteorologist Nick Bannin. And Nick, as you're seeing right in there in between us, this is a view of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge in Tampa, Florida, which is closed, of course, to traffic because the winds are incredibly strong, a lot of rain moving in there. But recap what exactly the National Hurricane Center and the experts are sharing about the storm.
Yeah, so 3:10 Eastern Time, just after 2 o'clock Central Time, Ian made landfall near Cayo Costa, Florida, and we just got this information in. Hurricane Charlie in 2004 made landfall near Cayo Costa, Florida as a 150 mile per hour hurricane, which is the exact same maximum sustained winds that we had with this storm, almost making landfall in the exact same place. It's sort of an island just northwest of Fort Myers, so it will likely go back over water and then technically make landfall again. So probably we're looking at 2 Florida landfalls. But let's go ahead and look at the tropical satellite and radar here with its current positioning and status. There is a Category 4 major hurricane here. So you're seeing the eye wall there on shore. What makes it make landfall? Well, that's when the center of the eye crosses over land. It's not when the eye wall starts to cross over land. It's all about the center. And what I can do here, let me put on the little pointer. So there's Cayo Costa, Florida there, this little island. And then the eye is going to go back over water. In fact, it's already there. And then it's going to make landfall again. And what Hurricane Charlie did in 2004 is it made landfall in Cayo Costa, Florida, and then made landfall near Port Charlotte. So it's possible that Ian does exactly the same thing. Still some interesting facts that will be put into the record books eventually. But for now, we're dealing with devastating winds. Of course, the eye wall surrounds the eye. The eye wall is where the strongest winds are. This here is our radar imagery picking up hail, and the National Hurricane Center's Hurricane Hunter aircraft actually got pummeled with hail as they were flying into Ian a short time ago, a rarity for them, and one of their pilots actually said that this was the roughest flight they've ever had. And of course, they're used to flying into hurricanes of all magnitudes as well as tropical storms with dedicated aircraft that are meant to be able to take on the winds and the rain and all the turbulence that goes with a hurricane of this status. But it was rough even for them, Will.
Yeah, and as this hurricane has made landfall, what becomes the biggest concerns for the people who may have stayed behind and didn't evacuate?
So the storm surge was the initial concern, and it still is until this eye and the surrounding walls move more onshore. But then it becomes rain, it becomes wind, it becomes getting cut off from society when you've got power lines, poles, trees covering roads where you would hope to be able to use to gain access to water and food and that type of thing, and you'll be without power for a while. So those are the concerns you have for the people that have stayed. And of course, we're not even done with the storm yet. It's still expected to be a Category 3 major hurricane at 7 this evening with winds of 120 miles per hour. Let me zoom in a little further here. And that will be as the eye passes near or just to the east of Sarasota. And then we take it into Thursday morning as it moves toward Orlando as a tropical storm. Of course, they had to close Disney World, I believe, because Orlando is further inland from both coasts, but they're still going to get a tropical storm at least out of this, if not near hurricane force conditions. And then the storm is expected to pass to the other side, the eastern side there of the Florida Peninsula, and then make another turn toward either Georgia or South Carolina, not as a Category 4 hurricane, but likely as a tropical storm before weakening further into the weekend. So we still are going to be talking about this through Saturday as an existing storm, but we'll probably be talking about the damage and potentially injuries and deaths long after that.
Yeah, as we've seen this storm approach the Florida coast, a lot of video has come in on what the effects of it are causing. And if you take a look right here, this is some video from earlier this afternoon in Naples, Florida. The storm surge coming in there, submerging vehicles, approaching what is almost even the second story of some apartment buildings there, Nick.
Yeah, and you know that's the concern always with storm surge, is that even if you don't get enough rain to lead to flooding, of which that could certainly still cause flooding inland with Ian, you get the winds that are in excess of 100 miles per hour pushing ocean water further and further inland, and that's salt water there that's damaging and submerging those cars. It's not fresh water that you're getting from the clouds above. So not only the danger that you would get with the storm surge, the threat to life and property, but then anything that's left is covered in salt water instead of fresh water, and then that leads to other problems. And then you've got marine life that's stuck inland. You've got people's boats as well that have been washed inland too. It's a whole different mess.
Yeah, it's been interesting looking at social media in the last hour or so and seeing what all the storm surge has moved, including homes being washed off their foundations, vehicles, large mobile homes being taken away too. But what we're looking at here is just the effect of the winds that the storm is bringing with it on shore.
Yeah, so the red color here is the winds that are hurricane force, maximum sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or greater. So I'll put this into motion, but first of all, I want to show you with our little measuring tool just how wide the hurricane force winds go. And that's 81 miles of coastline getting whacked with hurricane force winds. How far, how wide do the tropical storm force winds go? Well, I'll clear that measuring tool and add another one. And you can see here as it gets going here, sometimes these computers get a little finicky. It's a little over 300 miles of tropical storm force winds that are affecting the rest of Florida. So certainly while a lot of our attention is going to be on where the eye goes, where the strongest winds are, we can't forget that the rest of Florida, where people have evacuated to, are still dealing with the tropical storm force winds. And a tropical storm is enough to cause problems, both with flooding and with damaging wind. And then we take you into the future. You see the clock there at the top of your screen. It takes until about 7 tomorrow morning until the hurricane force winds disappear. And then we're dealing with the tropical storm force winds. But still, Fort Myers, Florida, that's right now getting hit with a Category 4 hurricane, is still going to be dealing with tropical storm force winds through 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So you think about when's the cleanup going to begin? Well, that's not going to begin until the winds have died down and the rain has stopped. With still dealing with a tropical storm basically tomorrow morning at 7 in the morning, at least until then it's going to be a while before those people who chose to ride out the storm could get any help.
Yeah, I mean, that is the kind of devastating effect of this, is how long this storm is going to last for a lot of people with its effects, given that, almost 24 hours after it approaches the coast, there will still be effects lingering in that area.
Yeah, the only good news, if there is any, is that some of the original projections on the forward movement of the storm, not the rotational movement, the forward the forward movement of the center of the storm, were a little slower than what we've seen in reality. It's moving at about 9 miles per hour as opposed to 3 or 4. The big difference there is that it will not bring as much rain when it moves about twice the speed as originally thought, although it will still bring a lot of rain, and of course it still bring a lot of wind too. These are the current winds, the gusts being reported. The Fort Myers site right in the middle there lost communication with them, so we're not getting data out of that Fort Myers sensor. That's why that one's blank. But the other ones surrounding it, Key West there at the bottom, that 33, Miami at 36 mile per hour gusts, Tampa 58 mile per hour gusts, And these gusts extend toward Mobile, where they're getting 43-mile-per-hour gusts. They're still well away from the storm, but the difference you've got with high pressure, well in control of our weather here in central Texas, and then that massive, strong low pressure that is the hurricane means that it's still going to be windy well away from the storm. And then we have the continuation of these hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings too. The darker red there being the tropical storm warnings and the hurricane warnings there being that lighter color. But what's interesting here is that the hurricane warnings are not just for the western peninsula of Florida, but on the other side as well, because remember, the storm's going to emerge on the other side. May not quite be a hurricane then, but I think that the National Hurricane Center is trying to be cautious and put out the alert to portions of the eastern peninsula of Florida that, hey, you might be feeling the effects or near effects of a hurricane too.
One thing that when you look at kind of the radar view of this and how large the storm is, it's a monster for sure. And it is rare for something that big to approach the state and hit it pretty much along the coast there.
Yeah, and what I'll try to do here, bear with me, this is sort of on the fly,
Okay.
is I want to show you what this storm looks like if I took off the radar, because the radar there gives you the indication of the significant rain they're getting. But let me turn off the satellite, the radar view, and just give you a look there at what it looks like from a satellite perspective.
Wow. And
then I'll even take off the icon for the hurricane itself, and then you can see the eye wall there. And this is from a little bit earlier today, so as I save this and hop out, you might get a better perspective. So what happens, Will, when we do things on the fly like this, it takes a couple of minutes. This is the behind-the-scenes stuff that we're doing before we go on the air.
Yeah, and we're doing it here with everybody else watching.
So here's the wide view of the hurricane, just the satellite alone. And we have some great satellite technology that's improved a lot over the past few years, where we're getting this image every minute updated, which we never used to be able to do. But then we can zoom in on the eye that already made landfall once and may make landfall again over Port Charlotte. You can clearly see the circulation. In fact, for a time there when it was over the water, you could see straight through the storm right and down to into the Gulf of Mexico there. And of course, right now, that eye wobbled its way to making landfall just after 3:10 Eastern, 2:10 Central Time, and that's where it is right now. And of course, as the storm moves over land and it weakens here over the next day, we won't be able to see the eye wall anymore. That will fill in, and then the storm will lose a lot of its intensity and speed. But aside from the utter devastation that this is going to cause, these strong storms in their own way are a thing of beauty too.
Remind people who are watching our live stream right now what kinds of winds this storm is packing at the moment.
So we've had gusts in the 100-mile-per-hour range as of about an hour ago. The maximum sustained winds that could come with this at landfall were at 150 miles per hour. Now, it is very difficult to get proper sensors to work correctly, and sometimes you find out after the fact, days, maybe even months later, they might upgrade this to a Category 5 retrospectively once they look at some of the data that was lost because the power went out, because the sensors blew over, that type of thing. But certainly they're getting winds at or over 100 miles per hour, and not just an instantaneous burst of wind like that, but winds that are like that consistently for potentially hours in some places.
I do want to show people, because we've been monitoring some of the live feeds really quickly, so I'll switch the views at the moment. So what we're going to look at now is this view from Naples, Florida, where the NBC News crew is waiting at the moment and observing what this storm is bringing onto shore. So as you can see, dozens of vehicles submerged at this time because of the storm surge that has come up onto that area in Naples here. Nick, kind of explain what we're looking at, because when people hear the term storm surge, what exactly is that?
So think of it like the ocean being pushed on land. I've got another graphic I can whip up for you here in a second too. It is the storm surge inundation, which is basically how much water is getting pushed from the ocean, driven by the winds, and getting pushed onto land. That is salt water. It is not one big wave. It gradually goes up as the winds move ashore. And what we saw earlier, Will, that was kind of interesting in the Tampa Bay area, they were getting winds blowing offshore in such a strong way that it was pulling their water away. So kind of the opposite effect happening. You're losing the water, but then that water instead being pushed ashore farther south of Tampa Bay into places like Fort Myers. And I've almost got this this extra map ready to go here.
So astounding to see some of those videos of the time lapse, in a sense, of a sped up view of what the water being sucked out from particularly Tampa Bay area. That is all over social media at the moment. It is very astounding to see. But if you're just joining us, meteorologist Nick Bannin is here after Hurricane Ian has made landfall in southwest Florida there near Cayo Costa, Florida. Nick showed us where that was just a few moments ago, and we are looking live at Naples, Florida, where NBC News is stationed at the moment, showing you just how strong the winds are, the rain that's falling at the moment, and the storm surge that has now flooded dozens of vehicles there in that area by where they are posted at the moment. So that devastation is only beginning. And Nick, I know that you were saying that you had some information about storm surge. Is that information ready to share?
Yeah, that's ready to go now. So this is a map of how much the storm surge or the ocean water gets pushed inland. And the western peninsula of Florida has a shallower coastline. So it is much easier for a hurricane like this to push water farther inland. You see the legend there on the left, and you can see the areas where greater than 9 feet above ground is where the amount of water that could be pushed in from the ocean inland. This is not quite a worst case scenario map, but it's close to it. So basically this is as bad as it could get, and they make a lot of their evacuations based on these maps. But you can see the significant area near Fort Myers, and certainly closer to the coastline, that if it's almost worst case, all this area here in red would have 9 feet of ocean water pushed inland. And there's a gap here, a bay, where the water could get funneled even farther eastward because of the inlet here. It just goes to show you the power of a hurricane and the potential damage and devastation it could do. And of course, farther closer to the water, you don't get the rising colors like you do here. It just goes straight to red, just goes to the 9 feet of storm surge potentially.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, we were talking earlier with Kristen Curry. She joined us here on KXAN Live, describing just the historical nature of this storm. We don't see too many like these very often, but Florida has been hit quite a few times by storms just this large.
Yeah, and what we're going to be doing is taking a look. We already mentioned the similarities with the location and wind speed, the maximum sustained wind speed with Hurricane Charlie, almost making landfall in almost the exact same place. But there are only a select few hurricanes that have come in with this level of devastation. And Hurricane Michael in 2018 comes to mind. That was the last Category 5 to hit Florida. We remember that one well. But some of the effects and the comparisons that we're going to do with Ian won't necessarily be done today. You'll have a better idea on what it has done in the days and weeks to come, and then you'll be able to sort of say, okay, the storm surge reached this, the wind speeds reached this, the pressure bottomed out here, and this is how it compares to other storms like it.
Well, Meteorologist Nick Bannin, thank you for being with us for as long as you have this afternoon, sharing some updates about Hurricane Ian as it made landfall in southwest Florida. Is there anything you would want to share before we wrap up our live stream and put that out there for our viewers?
Well, I just want to mention that our 4 o'clock newscast today, we're going to spend extra time talking about Ian. We've got a large team of meteorologists here, and our own chief meteorologist, David Yeomans. The tropics are his area of expertise, so he's going to be diving deeper into some of the stuff that we've barely scratched the surface on here during this update. We'll also have new projections on where the storm's going next for those of you who maybe have family in Florida or even Georgia or South Carolina. We're not necessarily out of the woods as far as those other areas are concerned too.
Much more to track. Meteorologist Nick Bannin, thank you for being here again and for sharing all that information.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, if you'd like to check out more forecast details about Hurricane Ian and its effects, you can go to KXAN.com right now, as well as keep your KXAN News mobile app and KXAN weather app handy, because we'll share out other updates about this storm, which has now made landfall in southwest Florida. Thank you all again for watching. I'm Will DuPree. We'll see you back here again very soon. Take care, everybody.